My name is Lauren Carter, and I learned early how to create beauty out of broken things. I was never the favorite in my family. That title belonged to my older sister, Vanessa, who seemed to shine simply by showing up. My parents adored her, spoke of her accomplishments, even when there weren't many to list, and somehow always looked past me. But when the bills arrived, when repairs needed to be done, when responsibility knocked at the door, all eyes turned my way. I never raised my voice, never made a scene. Instead, I lowered my head and worked. Design became my escape and my survival. In Santa Fe, New Mexico, I filled sketchbooks with patterns, colors, and ideas, sitting in small coffee shops that smelled of cinnamon and roasted beans. I took every freelance job I could find, no matter how small. A logo for a bakery for $350. A wedding invitation design for $200. A website revamp for a boutique hotel that paid $4,000. Then, slowly, larger projects appeared, web mock-ups for regional companies, brand kits for startups, packaging designs for small but growing businesses. If it paid in dollars, I said yes. I needed every cent. Most months, I sent money back home. Not to Vanessa, not to my parents, but to keep the house my grandmother, Rose, cherished. Our family's ranch sat just a few miles outside Santa Fe, a place of red earth, cottonwoods, and wide skies. The house itself was long and sunlit, with whitewashed walls, red tile floors, and a porch that stretched across the front like open arms. I loved that house, but not nearly as much as my grandmother did. For her, it was memory and belonging, and I couldn't stand the thought of her suffering inside it. When the roof leaked, I wrote a check for $7,800. When the well pump broke in the middle of summer, I paid $3,200. When the old Ford pickup needed brakes, I covered the $640 bill. I kept every receipt, every invoice, tucked neatly into folders that I later organized into a spreadsheet. I called it Household Ledger. On Sunday nights, while others relaxed, I updated my files. At first, I thought it was simply good record-keeping. Later, I realized it was my armor, proof that I had carried a weight no one else would even acknowledge. My parents didn't see it that way. To them, I was simply doing my duty. Family helps family, my mother, Margaret, would say with a dismissive shrug. My father, Daniel, would add, "You're good with money. You can handle it." Meanwhile, whenever Vanessa breezed through town, she was celebrated as if she were royalty. They'd brag about her big opportunities in Denver, though I never saw any actual evidence of her work. She called herself a consultant, but I never saw an invoice, never heard of a project. What I did see were Instagram photos of her in designer dresses at charity galas, glasses of champagne in her hand, smiling with people whose names my parents dropped into every conversation. I didn't resent my grandmother's needs. She was the only one who seemed to see me, who appreciated the quiet labor I put into keeping the ranch alive. She often talked about the house as if it were a living being. "This house knows who cares for it," she would say, her hand warm against mine. She told me stories of the ranch, like the year the cotton harvest failed in 1962, or the night a horse broke through the fence during a storm. She saw the house as part of the family, and I believed her. Every time I repaired a leak or replaced a broken window, I felt like I was keeping a promise. Still, the money drained out of my life in ways that few people ever understood. A new water heater, $1,950. A cracked window, $410. After a storm ripped apart the back gate, I spent $1,175 to replace posts and hinges. In just 4 years, the total amount I had spent reached $86,400. It was a number that startled even me when I looked at it on the screen, each expense neatly dated and recorded. But when I asked my parents about sharing the costs, I was told to be patient. My mother said, "You know your sister will pay you back when her business takes off." My father chuckled, "You've always been the one who can manage these things." And so I stayed silent. I learned to live frugally. I sewed curtains from discounted fabric. I taught myself basic plumbing to avoid calling repairmen for smaller issues. I bought secondhand tools at yard sales. Every dollar I saved seemed to slide toward the ranch anyway, But I didn't complain. It wasn't about revenge. It was survival. And it was love for my grandmother, for the house, and for the piece of myself that felt anchored there. Vanessa came to visit only when there was an opportunity for family photos or to put on a show. She would park her rental car in the gravel drive, step out with a silk scarf draped just so, and declare the porch quaint, as if it were a prop. Her partner, Grant Pierce, always followed with talk about investors and big ventures. He loved to brag about his plans to buy a ranch in Texas once his startup raised $10 million. What he never asked about was the cost of the well pump or the insurance premium that had lapsed until I quietly paid it. What he did ask about once was mineral rights. It was at a birthday dinner, and his casual tone didn't match the sharpness of the question. I tucked it away in my memory, another line in my invisible ledger. Even as the money slipped through my hands, my career began to grow. I landed a significant contract with a regional hotel chain that needed a full redesign of its website. The deal was worth $42,000, the biggest single project I had ever secured. I used part of that payment to clear my credit card, another part to buy a new laptop that could handle the software I needed, and, of course, the rest went to pay for the ranch's insurance premium, which had gone unpaid by my parents. When I told Grandma Rose what I had done, she smiled, held my hand, and said, "The house sees you." Something shifted in me that night. For years, I had been invisible, working, paying, caring, while my sister was praised for accomplishments that never materialized. But when my grandmother said those words, I felt a light spark inside me. It wasn't loud or dramatic, just steady and warm, the kind of light that can guide you through storms. I didn't know it yet, but that light would be the thing that carried me through the battles that were waiting, the betrayals I hadn't yet uncovered, and the reckoning that would come sooner than anyone expected. When my grandmother, Rose, passed away on a cool October morning, the air inside the ranch seemed to grow heavier, as if the walls themselves mourned her. The house was unbearably quiet, and yet every board and beam seemed to whisper her absence. My parents arrived with somber faces, but their grief felt rehearsed, like lines they had practiced. They spoke softly about funeral arrangements, but never about the love that had lived in those walls. Vanessa appeared the next day, wearing oversized sunglasses and a sleek black dress, far too glamorous for the desert autumn. She posed by the porch as if she were being photographed for a magazine spread. I didn't cry in front of them. I saved my tears for the laundry room, where I buried my face in a basket of folded towels and let myself grieve in private. The morning after the funeral, I stayed behind at the ranch while everyone else went into town. My mother said she had errands. My father went to the bank. Vanessa, of course, declared she needed time to reset at a spa in Albuquerque. I moved slowly through the house, tidying corners that had collected dust, folding away small reminders of my grandmother's habits. In her sewing nook, I found stacks of fabric scraps, neatly folded despite their frayed edges. I bent to straighten a low shelf and discovered something tucked beneath a tin of old buttons. It was a flat envelope, wrapped carefully in wax paper, with my name written across the front in my grandmother's familiar blue script. My hands trembled as I opened it, revealing a notarized document. I read the words once, then again and again, until they began to settle into meaning. It was a deed, a real, recorded deed, filed 2 years earlier in Santa Fe County. The ranch, our house, the land, everything was in my name. The document declared me the sole owner. It also stated that my parents were tenants at will, which meant they could live there only with my consent, and only as long as they respected my terms. For a long moment, I couldn't breathe. My grandmother had kept this secret from everyone, even me. She must have known what would happen if she revealed it sooner. She had anticipated the storm, and she had armed me with this paper as my shield. My eyes blurred with tears, but not just from sadness. For once, I felt seen. My grandmother had understood. She had known the truth about who cared for the house, and she had trusted me to carry it forward. I photographed the deed immediately, saving it to my laptop, an external hard drive, and a secure folder in the cloud. I even sent a copy to my work email, disguised under an unrelated subject line. The thought of Vanessa or my parents finding and destroying the paper gnawed at me. I had seen how quickly they dismissed my efforts. I could only imagine how far they would go to erase proof that I was the rightful heir. The next morning, I contacted an attorney recommended by one of my design clients. Her name was Nora Blake, a steady-voiced woman in her 40s whose calm professionalism made me feel like I had finally stepped onto solid ground. I emailed her scans of the deed, and she confirmed its validity within hours. "Lauren," she said on the phone, "this appears clean and properly recorded. Your grandmother was very thorough." Nora walked me through my rights. I was, in every legal sense, the owner of the ranch. My parents' tenancy was at my discretion. If they tried to sell, rent, or change anything without my permission, I had the right to remove them. Then her tone shifted. She told me something that froze me in place. During her preliminary title search, she had found that a listing contract had been signed for the ranch 2 weeks earlier. My parents were named as sellers. The property had even been posted on a private real estate portal with an asking price of $1.2 million. Worse, there was already a pending offer. A buyer had deposited $50,000 into escrow. I stared at the wall, barely able to process the words. "I didn't agree to any sale," I said flatly. "I know," Nora replied. "And no sale can close without your signature. You're protected there. But the attempt itself is concerning. The buyer's deposit could become evidence of fraud." Her instructions were clear. "Gather proof, but stay quiet for now. Don't tip my hand." She advised me to save every screenshot I could find of the listing, to confirm the recording dates of my deed with the county clerk, and to keep my communications documented. She even suggested recording phone calls, with consent laws in mind. "Truth," she said, "is often a cold thing, especially when people prefer warm lies." So I did what I always do. I took notes. I called the county clerk and had them verify the copy of my deed. I saved screenshots of the listing from every angle. I organized my files so that each piece of evidence was labeled, dated, and backed up. I also began recording conversations with my family when possible. I hated how calculating it felt, but I hated more the thought of being blindsided by Vanessa's schemes or my parents' excuses. Thanksgiving was 2 weeks away, and plans were already underway for dinner at the ranch. My parents insisted on hosting. Vanessa offered to bring an incredible wine selection and mentioned she might bring a friend. Grant sent me a message hinting that a buyer who appreciates historic properties was excited to visit soon. I didn't reply. My silence was the only control I felt safe holding on to. Meanwhile, Nora drafted a letter confirming my ownership of the ranch, which she advised me to keep close but not yet share. She also prepared a notice to quit, a legal document that would allow me to formally evict my parents if they continued their attempts to act as though the property belonged to them. She stressed caution. "Stay calm. Let them reveal themselves. You'll be ready when they do." I promised her I would. That night, I sat at my small desk with the folder that contained my grandmother's deed. Behind it, I placed a printed copy of my spreadsheet, the household ledger. Line by line, it showed every dollar I had spent. $7,800 for the roof, $3,200 for the pump, $640 for the truck brakes, all the way to the total of $86,400. Proof that I had carried this house, alone, while Vanessa played at sophistication and my parents looked the other way. I slid both documents into a slim black folder and set it on my nightstand. To anyone else, it was just a binder. To me, it was the truth waiting for the right moment to surface. I didn't know exactly how the confrontation would play out, but I felt it coming like thunder in the distance. Thanksgiving would not be a holiday that year. It would be a reckoning. And for the first time in my life, I wasn't afraid of it. Thanksgiving should have smelled of sage, pie, and wood smoke drifting from the old stone fireplace. Instead, the ranch smelled of tension, like a storm held back by brittle politeness. My parents had gone all out to set the long porch table, as if presentation could disguise everything crumbling beneath it. The white tablecloth was pressed stiff, the china laid with military precision, and candles flickered against the gathering dusk. Vanessa arrived late, as always, making her entrance in a cream coat draped dramatically over her shoulders. She kissed the air near my mother's cheek and laughed, as if she were already the star of a play. Grant followed, his expensive sweater hugging his frame, his smile charming but hollow. They brought with them a bottle of wine that Vanessa announced was worth more than the truck in the drive. I bit my tongue and stayed silent. At the far end of the table sat a man I didn't know, a real estate agent, I guessed soft-spoken, with his napkin already folded into careful triangles. Dinner dragged on with stiff conversation. My mother asked Vanessa about her latest projects, which were described in vague terms about investors and expansions. My father praised Grant for his entrepreneurial spirit, though the details seemed thin. The agent chimed in now and then with comments about the beauty of wide porches, sunsets over the fields, and properties with character. I recognized his cadence instantly. It was the language of someone selling a dream to buyers with deep pockets. When the plates were cleared, my father rose. His hands rested on the back of his chair, his voice carrying the practiced authority I had grown up with. "We have an announcement," he said. The candles flickered in the pause that followed. "The ranch will soon be sold to a wonderful couple from California. They value history, and they want to preserve the spirit of this place." He smiled, a rehearsed smile that didn't reach his eyes. "The sale will more than provide for all of us. Vanessa will help manage the proceeds." He didn't look at me when he said it. He didn't need to. He expected me to stay silent, as I always had. I let the words sink into the silence. Then, calmly, I asked one question. "Who signed the listing agreement?" The air shifted. Vanessa's smile tightened. "Don't be petty, Lauren," she said, her tone sweet with venom. She rose from her chair and leaned close, her perfume sharp in my nose. "Stop making a scene?" I asked a legal question. I replied, my voice steady. Her face hardened. Without warning, she slapped me. The sound cracked through the porch. A glass rattled on the table. My mother gasped and clutched her pearls as though she hadn't just watched her eldest daughter strike the younger. The agent ducked his head, staring at his napkin as though it might shield him. Grant leaned back, his voice cool and cutting. "You have 10 minutes to get out of this house." My cheek burned, but my heart was steel. Slowly, deliberately, I reached into my bag and placed a slim black folder on the table. I slid out the printed spreadsheet, laying it beside the bottle of wine Vanessa had boasted about. For a moment, no one spoke. I let the silence work, then tapped my phone. A recording played, Vanessa's voice sharp and impatient. "If we get this into escrow fast, Lauren can't stop it. We can fix the paperwork later." Grant's voice followed, smooth and certain. "The buyer already wired 50 grand. The porch went still. Even the night seemed to hush around us. I tapped my phone again and opened a video call. Nora's calm face appeared on the screen, her office bookshelves lined neatly behind her. I angled the phone so everyone could see. "This is my attorney," I said. Nora greeted the table, her tone cool and professional. Then she read, line by line, the legal description of the ranch. "Title is vested in Lauren Carter," she announced, citing the recording number and date. "No sale can occur without her signature. The attempted sale without her consent, along with the taking of a deposit, is evidence of fraud." She lifted a document toward the camera. "This is a notice to quit, prepared with the names Daniel and Margaret Carter, should it become necessary." My parents' faces drained of color. Vanessa tried to laugh, the sound brittle and false. "Oh, this is ridiculous," she began. Grant leaned forward, his voice rising, but Nora's presence cut him down to silence. My father barked, "Sit down," but his authority sounded hollow. I remained standing. I picked up my spreadsheet, flipping pages slowly, my voice steady as I read aloud. "Roof repair, $7,800. Well pump, $3,200. Insurance premium, $2,450. Total to date, $86,400. I laid the papers flat. "I have carried this house." Then I lifted my grandmother's deed from the folder. Its crisp edges caught the candlelight. I set it in front of my parents. She knew I would. The real estate agent pushed back his chair, mumbling about a call he had to make. He disappeared down the steps and never returned. Vanessa reached for the deed, her manicured nails flashing in the light. I moved it away, firm and final. Do not touch my property. My mother's tears spilled freely now. She clutched her chest, whispering, "How could you do this to family?" My father's voice thundered with anger, demanding to know how I could betray them. But I felt the light my grandmother had lit in me rise and steady my spine. My voice was calm, cold. Family did this to me. I turned back to Nora. "We'll proceed with formal notice," I said. She nodded, ending the call. I gathered my folder and stood taller. "Dinner is over." My words sliced through the stunned quiet. "Tomorrow we'll discuss moving plans and a grace period. Vanessa, Grant, you need to leave now." Their faces twisted with fury, but they knew they had been exposed. With a final glare, they swept down the steps, their footsteps sharp against the gravel. My parents lingered, stunned, until I met their eyes and gestured toward the door. They followed slowly, as though dragged by a tide they couldn't resist. When the door finally closed behind them, the porch felt lighter, as if the house itself exhaled. For the first time in my life, I wasn't the quiet daughter holding everyone's weight. I was the rightful owner, the woman who had carried the ranch when no one else would. And I knew that night was only the beginning. Law never moves quickly, but it moves with weight. Nora filed the notice to quit the very next morning, and then she prepared a quiet title action to put an end to any future tricks. A demand letter followed, addressed to the real estate firm that had listed the ranch without my knowledge. Attached were the audio recordings and screenshots of the escrow details. Within a week, the buyer's attorney wired back the $50,000 deposit, clearly eager to wash his hands of the mess. The state licensing board opened a review of the agent. As Nora predicted, Grant's name surfaced in the file, connected to whispers of off-book promises. He did not like the sudden spotlight. My parents had no choice but to accept reality. I gave them 60 days to leave the ranch and arranged movers to help. I was not cruel. I wanted them gone, but not broken. Still, I was firm. I held my boundaries like a new fence after a storm. We drafted rules. If they wanted to visit the ranch, it had to be by appointment. No unannounced appearances. No backdoor deals. The first time they ignored that agreement and tried to enter the property without calling, I changed the gate code and asked Nora to send a second notice. They never tried again. Meanwhile, Nora filed a claim for unjust enrichment and contribution. She asked the court to recognize the years I had paid for repairs, taxes, and insurance costs my parents had deliberately shifted onto me while pretending the ranch was their burden. We had the receipts, the invoices, and my spreadsheet. When the judge reviewed the evidence months later, he nodded slowly as Nora explained how the record showed not only money but intent, that I had assumed responsibility in good faith while others had not. 6 months after the hearing, the judgment came. I was awarded $142,000 plus $18,000 in legal fees, to be taken from assets my parents had drained from my grandmother's small savings. It didn't make me rich, but it made me visible. For the first time in my life, my contributions were acknowledged in a court of law. Vanessa, of course, tried to insert herself. She filed statements claiming the ranch had always been meant for her, as though destiny could rewrite recorded deeds. Nora dismantled those claims with simple facts: the notarized transfer, the dates, the county filings, the recorded conversations. Vanessa's bluster evaporated in the face of documented truth. She stopped showing her face around Santa Fe altogether. At a chance encounter in Denver, she avoided me in public, ducking into a boutique as though I were contagious. Grant, more reckless, sent me a text one evening. "You'll regret this." I blocked the number immediately and forwarded it to Nora. She added it to the file. The state board later suspended the real estate agent for a year. Grant lost a contract he had boasted about during Thanksgiving dinner. I didn't lift a finger. Choices fold back on the people who make them. While the legal battles inched forward, I poured myself into building something new. My design work had already grown beyond scattered contracts. I rented a small office in Santa Fe, painted the walls white, and set a simple wooden desk beneath a window. I named my studio Cottonwood North, in honor of the trees that lined the ranch. The business blossomed. I hired an assistant for $48,000 a year, then a junior designer for $62,000. We landed a national outdoor brand that needed a complete rework, a contract worth $280,000. By the end of the first year, our revenue crossed $780,000. I paid myself $120,000, built a 6-month cash reserve, and created a $25,000 repair fund specifically for the ranch. I returned to my spreadsheet, not as armor this time, but as a map. I charted every expense, every win, every new opportunity. Numbers no longer felt like shackles. They felt like choices I could control. The ranch became a place of order and calm under my care. I set rules. No overnight guests without my consent. No unannounced drop-ins. No conversations that treated me like a mule carrying everyone else's weight. If my parents wanted to visit, they sat with me on the porch, coffee cups warming their hands, while we stuck to safe topics, weather, recipes, the cottonwoods turning gold. We did not speak of sales, shares, or Vanessa's latest scheme. I learned something in those quiet months. Boundaries are not walls. They are front doors. I choose when to open them, and I choose when to keep them shut. For the first time, I felt like the ranch was not a burden, but a home shaped by rules that respected me. One evening in late summer, I stood on the porch as the sky softened into gold. Light spilled through the cottonwoods, settling on the porch rails I had refinished. I thought of that night at Thanksgiving, the crack of Vanessa's hand across my face, the stunned silence that followed. And I thought of Grandma Rose, smoothing fabric before she cut, always whispering her rule: measure with care, then make the first true line. My first true line had been a simple spreadsheet. My second was the deed hidden in a wax paper envelope. My third was standing up at that table, playing the recordings, and refusing to be erased. With the business thriving, I bought a small house in Denver near my office. It cost $615,000, a clean, modern space with wide windows, a simple kitchen, and a spare room where I set up my sketch desk. I split my time between the city and the ranch, driving up on Thursdays and returning on Mondays. Every time I left, I watered the porch plants, swept the kitchen, and locked the door with a quiet goodnight to my grandmother. Sometimes people ask me how I found the courage to play that recording in front of my family. I tell them it wasn't courage.
It was bookkeeping.
I counted what I had given. Then I counted what I deserved. I don't collect trophies. I collect quiet mornings, paid invoices, and contracts with clear terms. I collect the sound of wind through cottonwoods, the satisfaction of setting boundaries that hold, and the pride of knowing the life I have now is one I built myself. This is what I know. The house remembers who cares for it. The court sees who carries the weight. And the world opens the moment you stop asking permission to exist. My life didn't begin the day the judge signed the order. It didn't begin when my parents left the ranch or when Vanessa finally stopped pretending she had a claim. My life began the moment I said, enough, and believed that my work, my quiet, steady work, was worth its place at the table.